The ER at St. Jude's Mercy erupted into a symphony of controlled chaos. Sirens blared, gurneys slammed, and every face wore a mask of urgent purpose. Rookie nurse Lila Ndiaye, still finding her footing amidst the polished efficiency, fumbled a dropped instrument, earning a sharp, dismissive glare from a senior tech. She was just another pair of hands, easily replaced, easily ignored. Then Mateo Silva burst through the doors, a vibrant flash of a teenager now pale and still, his eyes wide with an impossible fear. Acute aortic dissection. He's bleeding out, a paramedic yelled. Lila's breath hitched. A rush of frantic bodies converged, but the raw terror radiating from Mateo hit her like a physical blow. He was fading, fast. A cold knot formed in Lila's stomach, a familiar desperation from forgotten, remote clinics. They might scream, they might curse, but as Mateo's life hung by a thread, a quiet resolve hardened in her soul. She would save him. The chaos intensified, but a new, almost reverent hush fell as Dr. Aris Konstantinou, chief vascular surgeon, swept into the ER. His scrubs were pristine, his jaw set like a sculptor's marble, and his eyes, sharp as surgical steel, cut through the noise. "Report," he barked, his voice accustomed to immediate obedience. Dr. Xiangli, the head of ER and a woman whose efficiency was as legendary as her skepticism, snapped to attention. Mateo Silva, 16. Acute aortic dissection, type A, BP dropping fast, signs of tamponade. "We're losing him," Dr. Lee rattled off, every word a clinical, detached fact. Konstantinou didn't even glance at Lila, who was trying to make herself invisible against a wall of blinking monitors. He didn't see the silent, urgent tremor in her hand as she watched Mateo's chest rise and fall with agonizing effort. To him, Lila was just furniture, a rookie who hadn't yet earned the right to breathe the same rarefied air. "Get him prepped for war. We're going in now. I need a rapid infusion line, stat." His command sliced through the air, precise, unforgiving. Lila moved to assist with the four, but a senior nurse waved her off with a brusque, "No, Ndiaye. You fetch the next crash cart from storage. Don't touch anything until it's sanitized." The dismissal stung, a familiar slap of insignificance. She gritted her teeth, the metallic tang of frustration mixing with the acrid scent of antiseptic. From the periphery, as she pushed past frantic staff, she saw Konstantinou, all confident authority, lean over Mateo, his face a mask of intense focus. He moved with the practiced grace of a master, yet something in Mateo's rapidly deteriorating vitals made Lila's gut clench. This wasn't like the textbook cases. This teen's collapse was too rapid, too complete, even for an aortic dissection. The specific pattern of his peripheral pulses, the way his pupils seemed to dilate unevenly, tiny details that screamed something more, something different. Lila's mind flashed back to a remote village clinic, a makeshift operating table under a flapping canvas, where conventional approaches were luxuries they couldn't afford. There, she'd learned to see beyond the obvious, to innovate. "His peripheral pulses are nearly absent on the left, Dr. Konstantinou," she heard Dr. Lee observe, her voice tight with concern. Konstantinou didn't miss a beat. "Compensatory vasoconstriction. Standard dissection, Lee. We've seen worse." He scoffed, his arrogance almost a physical barrier. Lila, returning with the clattering crash cart, felt a cold dread creep over her. They weren't seeing it. They were following the book, but Mateo's body was writing a different story. The monitor's incessant beeps accelerated, a horrifying countdown. Desperation, raw and primal, started to bubble up in the pit of her stomach, overriding the fear of being reprimanded. The monitor's incessant beeps accelerated, a horrifying countdown that echoed the growing dread in Lila's chest. "His blood pressure is dropping further, 70/40, a tech yelled, voice cracking. Dr. Konstantinou, jaw tight, ordered rapid fluid boluses, a standard response for internal bleeding, but Lila's gut screamed it was wrong. This wasn't just blood loss, it was a structural collapse. The subtle facial asymmetry, the distinct pallor on one side of Mateo's face, the uneven dilation of his pupils, these weren't textbook signs of a typical aortic dissection. They were signals of something far more complex, a specific kind of systemic failure that demanded an immediate, non-standard intervention. "Still no improvement with the fluids, Doctor," Lee reported, her voice now a tight wire. Konstantinou swore under his breath, a flash of something akin to panic flickering in his usually impassive eyes. He barked orders for vasopressors, escalating the protocol, but Lila watched Mateo's chest, saw the faint, desperate struggle for breath. His lips were turning blue. The teen, who just moments ago had shown glimmers of fight, was slipping away before their very eyes. "Sir," with respect, the uneven pupillary response, and the unilateral pallor, Lila began, her voice quiet but firm, trying to cut through the rising chaos. Her words, though measured, felt like a cannon shot in the tense silence that followed Konstantinou's latest frustrated command. He whirled on her, his face a mask of fury. "Nurse Ndiaye. Are you questioning my judgment? This is a dissection, not a neurology consult. Focus on the patient, not your speculative observations." His voice was a harsh whip, intended to put her back in her place, to silence any dissent in his elite arena. Dr. Lee cast Lila a sympathetic, warning glance, urging her to back down. But Lila couldn't. Not when Mateo's shallow gasps for air were becoming ragged, desperate sounds. His heart rate, once racing, was now dipping dangerously. Dr. Konstantinou, his left radial pulse is completely absent, and his femoral pulse is thready. She pressed, her internal alarm blaring louder than any monitor. She wasn't questioning, she was seeing. Seeing what years of sterile protocol had perhaps trained them to overlook. Konstantinou didn't even turn. "It's a collateral compromise, nurse. Standard. Get another line in." His frustration was now palpable, tinged with a raw desperation that betrayed his composure. The chief surgeon, renowned for his ice-cold precision, was losing control. The carefully constructed edifice of his expertise was cracking under the impossible pressure of a rapidly failing patient. The air in the ER grew thick with the metallic scent of fear and the unspoken admission of failure. Mateo's monitors shrieked an urgent, sustained alarm, and then, with a horrifying finality, the flatline tone began. A collective gasp swept the room. "Ever felt like Lila, overlooked despite knowing you have something vital to offer? We've all been there. Her story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss how she proves them all wrong. If you love tales of hidden heroes and incredible comebacks, why not join our growing global community? Hit that subscribe button now. Your support helps us bring more gripping, heartwarming, and inspiring narratives like Lila's to life. Come be a part of our story-loving family, we'd love to have you." The piercing wail of the flatline severed the last threads of order in the ER. CPR compressions began immediately, a rhythmic, desperate thud against Mateo's young chest, but hope was a rapidly deflating balloon. Dr. Konstantinou, his face a mask of furious concentration, barked orders that seemed to lack their usual conviction, each word laced with a frantic edge he rarely displayed. He was losing. They were all losing. Lila felt a cold, hard knot form in her stomach. It wasn't the usual rookie panic, it was a deeper, more profound terror, the kind that gripped her in remote clinics when the closest aid was a 2-day trek away. She saw Mateo's lifeless face, the blue tinge spreading, and a surge of absolute clarity ripped through her. The protocols, the hierarchy, the fear of judgment, it all dissolved into background noise. All that remained was the boy, flatlining, and the image of a solution, stark and undeniable, burning in her mind. Her voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady, cutting through the renewed chaos of the resuscitation efforts. "Sir," she began, the single word a quiet tremor against the clamor. "Sir, there's another way. A manual stabilization." Konstantinou spun around, his eyes, usually sharp and calculating, blazing with outrage. His face was flushed, veins popping in his neck. Another way. Nurse, are you insane? This isn't a jungle clinic. We are following advanced life support protocols. Get back to your station. His words were a whip crack, meant to silence, to shame, to put an insignificant rookie back in her place. The full force of his intimidating authority crashed down on her, the weight of St. Jude's elite reputation bearing witness. A lesser person would have crumbled. But Lila didn't. The flatline was still screaming. Mateo was still dying. The humiliation was a small price to pay for a chance. Sir, she insisted, taking an involuntary step forward, the dissection is compromising his peripheral arterial system too rapidly for standard access. I've seen it. There's a technique for manual pressure and counter-distension, specifically for acute aortic dissections. It can buy us time for surgical intervention. Her words tumbled out, measured and precise, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Dr. Lee, the head of ER, finally looked up from the monitor, her brow furrowed in skepticism. Ndiaye, what are you talking about? That's highly unorthodox. Untrained. There's no peer-reviewed basis for that in this setting. She dismissed Lila with a wave of her hand, turning back to Konstantinou, ready to resume the standard, failing efforts. Mateo's pupils were dilating. The rhythm of CPR seemed to slow, a dirge now, not a pulse. Konstantinou looked at the monitors, then at Dr. Lee, then, finally, his gaze fell on Lila, her small frame radiating an improbable, unyielding conviction. The last vestiges of his composure shattered, replaced by raw desperation. He had run out of roads. Every standard path had led to this inevitable, tragic end. He clenched his jaw, his eyes darting between Mateo's dying form and Lila's unwavering gaze. The words were dragged from him, a concession that cost him everything. Tell me exactly what you'll do, nurse, he grated, his voice hoarse, and be quick about it. It wasn't permission, not truly. It was the desperate gamble of a drowning man, grabbing at the slimmest, most improbable straw. It was a terrifying, exhilarating, terrifying opening. Lila felt the fear recede, replaced by a surge of pure, focused resolve. This was her moment. This was Mateo's only chance. Lila didn't waste a second. Her voice, though still quiet, now possessed an unwavering clarity that cut through the lingering despair. Suction here, please, she directed, her gaze fixed on Mateo, not the formidable surgeon. And a fresh sterile towel, quickly. Her hands, usually occupied with mundane tasks, moved with an instinctual grace. She leaned over Mateo, her posture utterly focused, isolating the specific anatomical landmark she needed. Dr. Konstantinou watched, a grimace of doubt still etched on his face, a silent challenge in his eyes. Dr. Lee, ever the skeptic, crossed her arms, ready to interject the moment Lila faltered. The other nurses and residents, frozen in a tableau of disbelief, simply stared, their minds grappling with the audacity unfolding before them. Lila's fingers, slim and steady, found their target with uncanny certainty. It wasn't a violent intrusion, but a deliberate, almost tender exploration. Her touch was feather-light, yet imbued with an unyielding purpose. The simple, brief description she'd given of manual stabilization had sounded almost deceptively simple, but the reality of her actions was far from it. This wasn't a standard procedure, it was an art, honed in the harshest of environments, where technology failed and human touch was the only lifeline. The room fell into an unnatural hush. Even the rhythmic thud of the chest compression seemed to quieten, becoming a backdrop to the silent ballet of Lila's hands. Her brow furrowed in concentration, a fine sheen of sweat beading on her temple, but her eyes were piercingly clear, locked onto the subtle shifts beneath Mateo's skin. She was seeing things no one else in that high-tech ER could, the whispers of the dying vessel, the frantic internal struggles of a young heart. A barely perceptible shudder ran through Mateo's body. The erratic, dying flicker on the heart monitor smoothed out, just for a beat, then another. Konstantinou's eyes, fixed on the screen, widened fractionally. Dr. Lee leaned forward, her skepticism wavering, replaced by a dawning, unwelcome intrigue. A resident gasped, quickly clamping a hand over their mouth. Lila ignored them all. She was in a different world, a sacred space between life and death. Her fingers adjusted, imperceptibly, holding a fragile balance. It was like watching a sculptor coaxing life from clay, but instead of clay, it was human tissue, and instead of a form, it was a fragile pulse. The raw tension in the room, previously a suffocating weight, now shifted. A new current began to flow, a nascent, terrifying hope, fragile as gossamer. They were witnessing something impossible, something beyond their textbooks, and it was being performed by the quietest, most overlooked person in the room. The initial shock had been her speaking up. Now, a deeper, more profound awe began to ripple through the stunned elite. Lila's focus narrowed further, shrinking the tumultuous ER down to the precise point beneath her fingertips. The world beyond was a blur of hushed anticipation, but within her self-imposed bubble, every nerve ending, every muscle fiber, was attuned to the delicate, almost imperceptible shifts in Mateo's young body. She wasn't just holding a position, she was coaxing, guiding, willing a torn vessel to hold its fragile integrity. It was a dance between immense force and infinitesimally small adjustments, a battle fought with the gentlest of touches. The monitor, previously a chaotic symphony of alarms, began to sing a new, tentative tune. The erratic beats grew stronger, the once fading lines gained definition, painting a picture of resilient life. A shared, shuddering breath collectively seized the room. Dr. Lee, who had been leaning forward, her face a mask of disbelief, slowly straightened. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed not on the screen, but on Lila's hands, moving with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly in its precision. Then, the final, decisive movement. With an almost imperceptible shift, Lila completed the maneuver. Her shoulders, previously rigid with strain, relaxed by a fraction of an inch, a silent testament to the immense pressure she had been under. She slowly, carefully, withdrew her hands, her eyes still fixed on Mateo, as if willing him to hold on to the precious stability she had just gifted him. The monitor didn't just stabilize, it soared. The blood pressure climbed from critical lows to a steady, reassuring reading. The heart rate, once a frantic drumbeat of impending doom, settled into a strong, confident rhythm. The numbers, cold and clinical, pulsed with a warmth that was almost palpable. A collective gasp, then a wave of profound, shuddering relief washed over the elite team. It wasn't just the cessation of a crisis, it was the witnessing of a miracle. Dr. Konstantinou, the chief surgeon, stood utterly frozen, his jaw slack. The fury that usually burned in his eyes had been doused, replaced by a dawning, complex mix of disbelief, humility, and an unfamiliar, potent admiration. He watched as a faint, almost imperceptible flush of color returned to Mateo's ashen cheeks. The boy, just moments from the precipice, was holding on. He was alive. Dr. Lee, usually so composed, let out a soft, involuntary cry, quickly stifled, as a single tear escaped and tracked a path down her cheek. The residents and nurses, previously terrified, now sagged against walls or each other, tears streaming, their faces a mixture of exhausted relief and utter awe. The room, which had been a crucible of despair, was now bathed in the incandescent glow of a life saved, of the impossible made real. Lila, feeling the immense weight of the situation finally lift from her own body, took a deep, shuddering breath. The quiet hum of the machines was now a lullaby of triumph, and in the sudden, reverent silence, she felt a surge of profound, life-affirming peace. The job was done. Mateo was stable. He would live to see the operating room. Dr. Konstantinou moved first, a man whose every action usually radiated unshakable authority now moving with an uncharacteristic hesitation. He approached Lila, his face a complex tapestry of disbelief, grudging respect, and something akin to awe. His blue eyes, usually sharp and critical, softened as they met hers. "Nurse Ndiaye," he began, his voice surprisingly muted, lacking its usual bark. He paused, struggling for words. "That was extraordinary. Beyond anything I've witnessed in my career." He extended a hand, a gesture of respect almost unheard of from him to a junior nurse, let alone one he'd just bellowed at. "Thank you. You saved his life." The "well done, nurse" that followed was a whisper, laden with a weight of humility and admiration that stunned everyone within earshot. Dr. Lee, stepping forward, her earlier tears now dried but leaving faint tracks on her cheeks, placed a hand gently on Lila's shoulder. "Lila," she said, her voice thick with emotion, I truly misjudged you. My apologies. That technique, it was pure brilliance. Where on earth did you acquire such a profound, almost forgotten skill?" Her question wasn't about qualifications, but about the depth of Lila's experience, about the person behind the nurse's badge. Lila, still breathing deeply, a faint tremor running through her limbs, looked at Dr. Lee, then at the chief surgeon, and finally, at the now stable Mateo. A quiet calm settled over her. "Remote clinics," she replied softly, her voice carrying the memory of sun-baked earth and desperate hope. "Places where MRI machines are myths and a scalpel is a luxury. You learn to rely on your hands, on observation, on what you can feel." Her words weren't a boast, but a simple explanation of a life lived on the fringes, where improvisation wasn't a choice but a necessity, and every life was fought for with fierce, raw determination. It was there, away from the glittering tech of St. Jude's, that Lila Ndiaye, the quiet, observant rookie, had forged her unique brand of empathy and expertise, learning to see solutions where others saw only dead ends. A ripple of understanding and profound admiration spread through the team. Residents, who had scoffed or ignored her just moments before, now looked at her with a newfound reverence, seeing not just a nurse, but a seasoned healer. The other ER nurses, her peers, exchanged looks of astonished pride, a silent acknowledgement that one of their own had just changed the game. Lila, however, remained grounded. She felt the warmth of their recognition, a profound sense of belonging washing over her, but her gaze lingered on Mateo, her relief centered solely on his continued heartbeat. Her transformation from an invisible cog to an indispensable cornerstone of the ER was complete, yet her inherent humility kept her focus not on her triumph, but on the fragility of the life she had just safeguarded. She was still Lila, the rookie nurse, but the world around her had irrevocably shifted. The week that followed was a blur of consultations, scans, and the quiet triumph of recovery. Mateo Silva, the vibrant teen whose life had hung by a thread, stabilized beautifully. The delicate aortic repair surgery performed by Dr. Konstantinou was a resounding success, made possible only by Lila's audacious intervention. Days later, a beaming Mateo, pale but full of youthful energy, was sitting up in his hospital bed, thanking the team that had saved him. For Lila, seeing his smile was the only reward she truly needed, a tangible echo of the life she had fought so fiercely to preserve. But the ripples of that night extended far beyond Mateo's room. Dr. Konstantinou, the once unyielding chief surgeon, had visibly softened. His commands were still precise, his expectations high, but a new current ran beneath them, a flicker of humility, a willingness to listen. He no longer saw Lila as merely the rookie nurse, she was Nurse Ndiaye, a title he used with a distinct, almost deferential weight. He'd occasionally pause by her station, not to bark orders, but to inquire, genuinely, about a complex case or a rare symptom. Once, she overheard him in the break room, recounting the events of that night, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance, instead tinged with a respect so profound it bordered on awe. He hadn't just acknowledged her skill, he had acknowledged his own fallibility, and in doing so, had grown. Dr. Lee, equally transformed, became one of Lila's quiet champions. The head of the ER, known for her strict adherence to protocol, now approached unconventional solutions with a newfound openness, a direct consequence of witnessing Lila's success. She initiated a review of ER training, pushing for workshops on rare trauma stabilization techniques, explicitly citing Lila's ingenuity. Dr. Lee began to delegate more, trusting her nurses' judgment in ways she never had before, a testament to her realization that true leadership wasn't just about command, but about empowering the diverse talents within her team. Lila, for her part, remained authentically herself. The quiet observation, the methodical approach, these fundamental aspects of her character hadn't changed. What had changed was the world around her. No longer was she invisible. Her presence in the ER now carried a subtle, undeniable authority. When she spoke, the room listened. Junior residents sought her counsel, seasoned nurses turned to her for insights, and even attending physicians sometimes paused to consider her perspective before making a decision. Her humility ensured she never abused this new influence, instead using it to foster better collaboration, clearer communication, and a more patient-centric approach to care. She walked the bustling corridors of St. Jude's Mercy Hospital with a renewed sense of purpose, her footsteps lighter, her gaze more confident. The weight of being an outsider had lifted, replaced by the deep satisfaction of belonging, of knowing her unique skills were not just tolerated, but celebrated. The emergency room, once a daunting crucible of pressure and judgment, was now a place where her quiet strength could shine, a place where empathy and unconventional wisdom had found their rightful, indispensable home. Lila Ndiaye had not merely saved a life, she had, in her own unassuming way, inspired a shift in an entire institution, proving that true heroism often emerges not from the loudest voices, but from the most observant hearts, capable of seeing solutions where others saw only despair, and in doing so, cultivating lasting hope and profound human growth. Lila's journey reminds us that true heroism often blossoms from quiet strength and the courage to see solutions others miss. It's a testament to the power of unique perspectives and the profound impact one person can have. We wonder, what everyday acts of quiet bravery have inspired you most? Share your thoughts below. If Lila's story resonated, if it reminded you that extraordinary potential lies within us all, we warmly invite you to join our global community. Your subscription helps us create more compelling, heartwarming stories like this, empowering narratives that celebrate the human spirit. Thank you for watching, for your invaluable support, and for being a cherished part of our journey together.